Now I have try to put up all that complexity of the assessment of the malignancy, and because the whole situation is complex, the clinical approach also is complex. To define that clinical approach would be in a very straightforward equation would be difficult. So what I have tried is I have tried to summarize my approach to the clinical practice. When I say this, again I stress upon that word, my approach to the clinical practice, and it's not that the same should be followed by everyone, and I am not commenting upon many of the other methods of approach to the malignancy. My approach to the clinical approach of the malignancy would be based upon our basic guideline of Vyadeha Tattva Parijnana. So I would be putting all effort to know about the disease, and at the same time Vedanayascha Nigraha, trying to minimize the possibility of trying to minimize the trouble to the patient, the pain and other complications of the or suffering of the patient could be minimized. Etad Vedyasya Vedyatvam na Vedyah Prabhurashah. Extending the life of the patient is not my target at all in the management of approach to the malignancy. But at the same time, we follow the universal guideline of the management: beneficence, non-maleficence, autonomy, justice, and the fidelity. These are the basic issue of treating any of the disease which are considered to be the basis of the medical practice, and in case of malignant lesions, these are important. The reason is we do not have, from Ayurvedic point of view, we do not have any such standard established method of curing a malignant lesion as such. So the treatment would be from the point of view of giving benefit to the patient at that moment, considering all the possibilities. So the important is it's not that whether the patient is cured of the disease or not. Life of the treatment also is important, like life of the family of the patient. If a person has to completely forego all his properties to save the life of an old person of 90 plus age with a cancer, and you may extend life by around 2 to 3 years, is it worth? These are all the questions which are sensitive. So to highlight on that part, I have tried to summarize the data of my patients, and I could have a standard data collection from somewhere in late 2000 as such. Earlier, of course, I didn't have a system, so most of the data which I am presenting now would be from 2006, from where I have used a digital base for my clinical practice. So earlier data, of course, I couldn't present. So from that day onwards, maybe the total number of patients whom I have treated with the malignancy of different categories: new patients 10,500, something like around 2.25 per day statistically, not that a one-fourth of a patient comes every day, that's the average, and follow-up visits around 20,000. Now, so my experience with dealing with the malignancy of different conditions would be of these categories. Among these variety of the patients, terminally ill patients who are very ill and very severe conditions, virtually they are hopeless, their number is quite huge. I usually use that word, like in our hospital, my name is mentioned in the clinical register records as Yam Sharma. I read it as Yama Sharma because the mortality figure of my patients is quite high because of these terminal ill patients. When I say this, it's not that the same pattern of the distribution of patients would be true for all. It could be varying from a physician to physician. So the guidelines can be modified according to the present setup of the physician. This is about what I have. And dropouts from the current therapy. Some of the patients who are on current therapy somewhere and somehow they have dropped out due to some reasons, either financial or otherwise, and they try to find an alternative means and they come across, and their number is around 570, comparatively lesser. Then patients who are undergoing therapy, either chemo or radiation, they want to have a backup from Ayurvedic treatment. That kind of a patients, that constitutes around another huge number. So maximum number is terminal ill patients. Then the another group of the patients who are undergoing the chemotherapy or radiation or whatever that current therapy, but at the same time they need some backup or they need to have some relief about the symptoms which could have occurred during the management. Then there are certain of the patients who are diagnosed with malignancies but not willing to undergo the current therapy. That's another group of the patients. Then a group of the patients who come for a second opinion. They are diagnosed with malignancy, they are already prepared for the therapy, the contemporary therapies, but before going for that they want to have opinion like whether should I go there or not. And then of course a good number of patients whom I diagnose, around 900, and this is the spectrum of the patients whom I have, whom I see. So my approach to these patients will be by a strategized approach. It's not that I would be saying the same. For each of these patients, my approach would be, for a terminally ill patient, my approach would be somehow try to prolong the life of the patient. Somehow try to prolong the life of the patient by supportive treatment. It's not that I suggest any specific line of the treatment there. It may be the approach would be, the expectation there would be lower, and somehow approach would be like improve the quality of life of the patient. Like a patient who is bedridden, having lots of bed sores, clean the bed sores, somehow improve the general condition. If the patient is having severe emaciation, try to improve the general condition with the Rasayana Chikitsa like Basti or so on. So there I cannot have a fixed standard medicine or approach. All that approach would be depending upon the patient's condition, somehow relieve the patient's distress. Symptoms could be reduced. That's how the approach would be, and there again all that would be approach would be based upon the dosha condition of the patient at that moment, and then plan the management. Whereas in the patients who have come up with a dropout from therapy, I would be very cautious. It depends upon the possible outcome of the therapies. If the condition is somewhat better curable, has a better possible result, I would insist on the patient to continue that therapy, and then only I would try to start with the Ayurvedic treatment. Rather, I would always have inhibit such patients from dropping out of therapy unless it's well known that that therapy is useless or outcome would be very poor. So the point is to give an advice to the patient. We should be aware of the possible outcome of the current treatment known, and the possible available current treatment protocols also are necessary. So from my point of view, to be a successful Ayurvedic practitioner, we should be aware of the advantages and disadvantages of the current system. Then a patient who is undergoing therapy and coming to us, the usual approach would be depending upon the clinical presentation and approach to the Dharpadni. So in all such patients, one of the common prescription which I would give is Arogyavardhini and Kumari Asav is a very common prescription, and often a Kanchana Raghukulu also is prescribed. The other medicines which I may give depending on the dosha lakshanas, like a patient would have a impaired appetite, then I will be adding Agnitundi like drugs. If the patient is very much emaciated, I will be like adding Ashwagandha as a medicine, so on and so forth. So depending upon the patient's presentation and dosha lakshanas, the treatment will be the medicines or maybe the bastis also. I would prefer Niruha Basti if the patient has more pain, Yakana Bastis if the patient is emaciated. So to define a single protocol would not be possible, but my approach would be that approach based upon the dosha conditions, and one of the common approach would be to improve the Dharpadni, and one of the common prescription would be Arogyavardhini and Kumari Asava. Then the patients who have been diagnosed as malignancy and not willing for therapy, there again a counseling with the judicious evaluation. The issue is simple, like if the outcome with the current therapy is really good and worth of it, I would insist on the patient to go for the therapy than depending upon Ayurvedic treatment. If the outcome is extremely poor and the cost factor is so much that the patient's family would be destroyed, then I would just counsel the patient exactly the situation, and then I may start with our treatment. If patient comes for the second opinion, this is really a challenging task, and to give a second opinion, we have to be very cautious. the currently available treatment and outcome has to be known, so we need to be updated. So I will try to keep myself updated with all the possible outcome of the tumor, cancer treatment now, and to a possible extent I will be giving an unbiased opinion. In a fresh diagnosed case again, it is same. Though I diagnose the case, I will give an option to the patient with a same approach like the judicious approach. So that's about the general approach to the treatment of malignancy in my practice. I won't prescribe any specific treatment for the malignancy, but maybe one of the drug, rather certain of the drugs which I have tried is initially in my clinical practice in 80s, I used to use Bhallataka, either in the Bhallataka Kshirapaka or Bhallataka Leha. With the Bhallataka, of course, there can be some significant changes in the outcome of the course of the disease. Some of the malignant lesions may have regressed slightly, but it results in some complications later. Bone marrow depression would occur. So I am not using Bhallataka since last around 15 to 20 years. Earlier I used to use that. Similarly, Rasamaniki also was used earlier, but that also is not a very dependable drug. Certain changes are produced in leukemia-like conditions, but not a very sustained. Whereas currently, many of the varieties of leukemia would have an extremely good outcome, and compared to that, this would not be sufficient as such. And hence, when I treat the patients or when I prescribe these medicines, I would be very careful, and virtually I don't suggest any specific treatment for a malignancy. If at all there is anything, it would be Kanchana Raghuggulu Arogyavardhini Kumari Asava, considering Kanchana Raghuggulu as a primary Arbuda Chikitsa. So whenever there is a mass, Kanchana Raghuggulu definitely is indicated. Arogyavardhini Kumari Asava for the Dhatvagni could be one general line of the treatment. Then another sort of experience would be the surgery and Kanchana Raghuggulu. So most of the patients whom I have operated upon, this is about the number of surgeries. Though I have done surgeries in many varieties of the malignancies earlier, but their number is comparatively lesser. Somewhat significant number is with the mastectomy and maybe the cancer prostate. In the cancer prostate conditions is the orchidectomy. These are the two significant variety of the surgeries which I have done in my clinical practice. And the number would be mastectomy. It's in the earlier days like 98 or earlier when I started my practice. Number of patients whom I have operated were more, because at that time the insurance policies were not there as common now. Number of mastectomy has been reduced in the last few years. Last 5 years it was very few like mastectomies have been done. So these are somewhat older data. In the present day situation, because of the current schemes of this insurance, most of the people, they may prefer surgery to be done elsewhere. So most of these surgeries are something more than 10 years old surgeries. The important point is a patient, what I have done in my clinical practice is, out of these 107 patients whom I have operated upon, I couldn't track like what happened about the 5. Then the patient, some of these patients after surgery, to follow up like either the radiation or the chemotherapy, I always give a choice to the patients. If the patients prefer that, they may go there. Of course, my responsibility will be removing the tumor, subjecting to histopathology, and of course in those days it was only the histopathology. Immunohistochemistry was not common at that time when I used to do the surgery. But recently it is the immunohistochemistry where you will have to have the HER2 tests and then maybe the FISH tests also, illuminated tests, which will be quite a fortune, a huge amount. But anyway, among the patient, so whatever that the current investigation tools, it will be there, and then the patient is given a choice. Now those patients who do not come under this category, I have prescribed Kanchana Raghuggulu Arogyavardhini Kumari Asava as the mainstay of the treatment for a long period with an idea of preventing the recurrence. And the outcome is, this is the outcome. The recurrence within a year, it's around 2 patients. Recurrence in between 1 to 5 years in 36 patients. Recurrence after 5 years is 6 of the patients. 26 patients didn't have a recurrence even after 7 years. Of course, to say that this is a very standard protocol treatment may be very confusing issue. But the point is, of course, the whole possibility of recurrence and then the incidence, it has to be now viewed with the current subtypes like the HER2 positive or negative, also on ER/PR tests also is quite important, where the prediction of the prognosis is possible. But most of these patients are prior to that period where the ER/PR tests were not possible. So to say that we have really produced a change is not very tenable, like, so it's not very standard. But with the Ayurvedic drugs like Kanchana Arogyavardhini, the data which is seen is comparable to a data of that period in any other hospital setup. With the chemotherapy also, I think almost similar data could be produced. And one of the important is the patients whom I have operated with the carcinoma breast, least grading was T2N1, because most of the patients whom I have operated would be of late stages. Among the carcinoma prostate orchidectomy which I have done around 12, again the same issue, the survival period of above 5 years could be achieved in up to about 4 in patients, something around 1/3 of the patients have survived. So the result, and there too the mainstay of the treatment will be Kanchanara Arogyavardhini Kumari Asava, along with some other modified changes as such. So that's about our treatment as such. Now the palliative care which I have said, like patients who have come in a terminally ill conditions, and when there are no other options, this is the mainstay of my practice in malignant disorders. And the whole approach would be, all I would say, like, I would be trying to add life to the years, though not years to the life of the patient. I may not prolong the life of the patient, but as long as the patient is living, his condition could be somewhat improved. And the approach to the management would be, I would be assessing the dosha condition and manage. And that how I would be managing would be the same. For bile management, it's usually Niruha Basti. For the dyspepsia-like symptoms, gastrointestinal tract symptoms, Arogyavardhini Kumari Asava, or occasionally Agnitundi. And for the cachexia, it is Ashwagandha. For pyrexia, tumor necrosis pyrexia, Mrityunjaya and Amritarishta. And neurological lesions, it's Ekangabhirabhrakavasma and anemia, Punarnamandura, Daksharishta. These are all certain of the examples of the prescription. So I can't say like a single approach to the management. And as an adjuvant to the chemo or radiation, this is one of the important issue. Of course, when I use option of this treatment, you will have some ethical questions like whether it is justified or not. There will be some prejudice also, whether it will be acceptable or not. So I would always try to avoid such situations where I will be giving my medicines as adjuvant, but in a few cases I have tried. But there are certain reports, now this is not from my experience, there are certain reports where people have tried, and these reports are presented in standard these journals like Hindu Kantagrata in along with for the immunomodulation, and curcumin, the extract of Haridra. These are all studied issues. So though I have not tried, just I have referred to those issues. Now before the end of that, I will try to share some of interesting certain clinical experience with one or two patients as such. This is about a patient whom I have treated in 2012. A patient was admitted on 9 July 2012. Patient was treated in KMC Manipal earlier and was diagnosed as a stomal tumor of the intestine. A huge mass was palpable, and the patient's condition was like that the patient had intestinal obstruction totally, and the patient had to be maintained on parenteral nourishment. The only other option which is left over would be a this enterostomy, where you will have to have a bypass. The tumor has to be excised and then have a tube inserted. Through the tube the patient has to be fed. The patient being a poor patient, and as I told you, this is as a that Emma Sharma policy. Patients who had come to me when there was a virtually no other option and they had spent a huge fortune at the time. When the patient came to me, the patient's condition was very critical and she was discharged from the hospital, and before going to home they came to our hospital, and the patient was admitted on 9th July 2012, and the patient was maintained on the parenteral therapy only for initial 2 days, and I have tried with Dashamula Nirodhasti. One of the important observations which I observed in that patient was when we palpated the tumor and I could feel the tumor mass easily over the abdomen, if I had twisted the position of the tumor, the bowel movements would be possible. Patient would pass the bowels. Then again after a few hours it gets retwisted, and then again there would be an obstruction. So during my clinical examination, every day, every time I used to keep that mass twisted so that the patient's bowel movements improved, and gradually we could reduce that parenteral administration, and the patient was shifted to oral maintenance by around 1 week. By 17th, patient could be maintained on oral feed. So obstruction could be partially relieved by a manual twisting. So I had some clue like this patient can be managed somehow surgically, though not the enterostomy. The patient was an old lady patient, 70 years plus old lady. So she was very resistant to surgery. She would say that I would like to die than really undergo surgery. But somehow I insisted on her, saying that it's not the enterostomy done, I will just open and then do. Patient said, okay, all right, I am ready to die, but you should not put a tube. That's the condition. Of course, with the enterostomy or bypass tubes also, I had a very unpleasant experience earlier. In early days of my practice in 86, I remember about that. I had done a gastrostomy in a carcinoma esophagus patient, a carcinoma esophagus, where the tumor cannot be removed otherwise. I had introduced a tube into the stomach, and the patient was fed directly into the stomach through the tube. And then of course I had used Ballataka during that period. I was using Ballataka in that patient, and the patient had clinically improved remarkably, had gained a weight, and by about 6 months of surgery, patient had gained significant weight, and patient was feeling well otherwise. Interestingly, there are certain other messages also important issue. During follow-up one of the day, the patient asked me like, can I feed that tube with holy sweet taste? See the situation, patient is not able to take anything orally, patient is given the food through the tube directly into the stomach. Patient has an urge for taking a sweet holy specifically, and at that time, because of my youth, I was younger at that time. If at all it would be today, my response would not have been the same. I made fun of that patient at that time. I repent for that kind of a reaction now. I made a fun of the patient, like how can you appreciate the taste by inserting that holy to the tube? And that comment of mine produced a significant depression in the patient, and the patient started developing a negative attitude the whole life, and within 3 weeks the patient died. And that was something like a very emotional issue for me also, like a human being feeling like eating a specific sweet directly, or taking the specific sweet into the tube, though he cannot appreciate the taste. See, and naturally that has I always consider that as one of the major lessons which I have learned in my practice, and my approach to the patient also has changed. That was one eye opener, where I have to respect the sentiments of the patient at that time. Of course, I repent upon all that, but from that day onwards, I have decided like I would never do a bypass surgery. These ostomy surgeries or tube feeding surgeries I would not do, and I have not done that. That was the last time. Now with this patient also the same thing, like I didn't do that surgery, but I thought of doing a laparotomy. The mass size, the CT scan image, the size was quite huge, a large size of the mass you could see, and it was palpable. During surgery, the mass is seen. I could just lift up the mass, and it was around 6 inches and 8 inches in diameter, 16 to 8 inches, quite a huge mass could be seen. So what I did was something unusual which no text has said. For a minute you can see this, the visual. What I did was, instead of removing the tumor, I made a small peritoneal pouch and kept that tumor in the peritoneal pouch so that it won't get retwisted. The position was fixed as such. So that the patient's bowel movements would be normal. I didn't do anything to the tumor. I didn't handle the tumor otherwise, because biopsy was done earlier, diagnosis was known. So all that I did was only reinserted the tumor into a peritoneal pouch, something like a surgery which is usually done in case of valvulus surgeries, exteriorization, and no textbook would say about that. But interestingly, that patient had a good recovery, and patient survived for around 3 years. Now during that post-operative period, patient was given only Kanchanaragul Arogyavardhini Kumari Asava, of course in between some supportive treatment with the blood transfusion. Patient survived for about 3 years, and she expired by around 2015 due to some stroke. These 3 years she had survived with all that normal life, visibly apparently normal life, and she had maybe a marriage of her granddaughter, and in that marriage of granddaughter I was one of the major attractions. So that's the point. Like, so she had some meaningful quality of life. And in 2012 we had a conference in our institution, malignancy, and she was presented live in the conference too. And that interesting issue is she could survive for such a long time with a normal life, and the whole cost of the treatment, average cost of the treatment prescribed is around ₹7 per day. Now the point is, if the patient would have gone for a standard medical treatment, otherwise the standard would be radical excision followed by imatinib, and the median survival period as per the statistics is just 10 to 12 months after the surgery. So with my sort of surgical approach and our Ayurvedic treatment, the survival period is more. And the current market rate, the cost of the treatment, that imatinib, is something like 3,200 rupees per pack of 10 tablets. So the cost of the treatment would be comparatively around 200, maybe 200 times more than the treatment cost of the treatment it had given. So the patient survived for 3 years, and the patient survived after, died after 3 years, and her post-death ceremony, the patient's son had arranged 2 suites in the day, so we used to call it bojja and so on. So there were 2 suites. He could afford that. So now when I say all this, there is some emotional, sentimental aspect of the treatment of the disease. This is not scientific. I am not saying this as a scientific. And this result, whatever we see, is not assessed in terms of the p-value, t-value statistically. Instead, it's about the emotional value which we have to consider. So that's one aspect. When I say this, it's not that only one of these patients. We had a large number of such patients of that category where something of that sort has occurred, and that emotional component is one of the important issues in that. Now about the same stromal tumor with the global incidence and statistics, the median survival period is around 8 months, and most of the patients have died with the stromal tumors, and the median tumor survival period with the imatinib is 10 to 20 months, and compared to all that different statistics, the survival period has been better with our treatment, and that we could change that. And before ending, another emotional issue, an emotional presentation about the case. This is another case which I have treated in 2015. A patient, young age patient, 20 years old patient, had a huge tumor of the brain, and it was diagnosed as a anaplastic astrocytoma, very rare form of tumor, and WHO grade 3. And he had undergone all the treatment elsewhere, and the outcome was very poor. Patient was expected to survive for about 1 month, and the patient was very emaciated, had a persistent status epilepticus like conditions, and the patient had a bed sore throughout. Patient's mother, who was around 50 years, was taking care of that patient, and in that stage patient came to our hospital, and the size of the tumor quite huge, almost occupying half of the cerebral hemisphere, and the outcome was very poor. And the only urge of the mother is somehow, at least one day, my son should identify him, recognize me, and call me Amma, and that's my target. I don't expect patient to survive. Of course, we tried all that. There is no, again, standard protocol of the treatment. We did all the dressing of the bed sores. He had almost 30 bed sores over the body, and I used to spend more than 1 hour every day for doing the dressing. did the dressing, gave busties and everything like there is no such standard protocol of the treatment. Every day the treatment would change. His electrolyte imbalances were managed. Somehow we could achieve a situation where the patient becomes semi-conscious and the patient could be able to identify his mother and call her as Amma. And that day patient's mother approached me and said, "Fine sir, now he may die. He has said, I am satisfied that he has survived that level." Of course, within 2 or 3 weeks of that, he developed some more complications and died. So I am not saying that the patient is cured as such. Now, when I say quote these 2 cases as such, it's not about that saying that the Ayurvedic treatment can cure, and I never claim that I have cured any malignancy. But my experience with the malignant patients is definitely yes, Ayurveda has a definite role, and in the management of the established diseases, particularly in very complicated cases. But the point, very important point, which the people have not, or policy makers have not identified, and which we should highlight, would be the preventive value of Ayurvedic treatment, and an elaborate study needs to be done, and the importance of that should be conveyed to the society for the sake of the humanity. To conclude, the carry home points are: the information about tumors in Ayurveda has not received the global attention, recognition. Prevention of the disease following the guidelines, it needs to be highlighted and it requires a focused attention. And at present, our area of strength is prevention and palliative care. Then I don't say that a curative treatment of a comparable nature to what we have in the contemporary system might not be possible as such. This is to conclude with this. Thank you for that patient hearing, and I expect reactions and questions.